Hey, hey,
How are you today?
good. Finally getting a little rain, which is great.
Oh man, I'm telling you, we got a gully washer yesterday or the day before, but
Yeah,
I'm telling my dog Bogey, he's had 4 days of firecrackers around this neighborhood, and he is not standing still for thunder or any more noises. He's just had it. He's had enough.
yeah, yeah. No, I get it. Our little dog wasn't too excited about it either. So, but it seems to have quieted down on our street now. But yeah, this rain, we really need it.
Yeah, it has been dry. Wherever you guys are, I hope that you're not having the storms we are today and the wind and the thunder and all the craziness. But if you need it, then I hope you get what you need. That'll all be good. But let me tell you, I'm excited about this particular subject because a lot of people don't really know what first party data is and why it's been in the news lately and what we're talking about when we talk about it being in the news. So that's the first thing I want to discuss. This is really about privacy. I mean, every time that a country does this, that, or so forth around privacy, this is what it affects. It affects third party data, first party data, all the data sets that people are collecting from you. And, people don't realize, well, maybe they do by now, but Google collects data, Facebook collects data, Apple collects data, Instagram, TikTok, all of them. They're data collecting machines. In fact, that's how they make most of their money and have in the past. But as these privacy laws come to bear, it really is changing the landscape of that. And everybody that I just mentioned actually is a third party data collector. So that's third party data and not first party data. Um, and even yesterday, did you see where the EU passed the strictest, most data restrictive law in the world right now? And when they passed it, I thought, oh, that's interesting because the EU is already one of the strictest, correct?
Yeah, well, yes, the EU has, through their GDPR laws, has definitely led the world in terms of codifying what their data standards are for, or what the requirements are for people who collect data. And um, different kind. I mean, they're bringing a lot of clarity about the different kinds of data, like we've talked about here: first party data, zero party data, and we'll talk about all of that here as we go.
Mm-hmm.
But they're talking about that, but also they're talking about the kinds of companies that are collecting that data and what their requirements are. Small businesses versus larger businesses have different standards, different requirements. And of course, GDPR doesn't really affect people in the United States unless they sell products overseas to
Mm-hmm.
people in the EU, which is not the majority of people who own and run home service businesses in the United States. Most of those are local businesses that you're gathering and collecting data only from people who live in your area, in your state. But we are seeing states that are starting to put together their own data laws, and guess who they're modeling it after? A lot of them are modeling it after what's gone on in the EU with the GDPR laws. So those requirements are very real. California was the first to do it. There are other states that are coming on board with similar laws.
Yeah.
Some of them more strict than California. Most of them not quite as strict, but it's only a matter of time before there's a federal law that every state and every business, no matter where they do business, is going to have to adhere to in the way that they collect data, the way they store that data, and their responsibility for that data if someone doesn't want you to have that data. If a consumer says, I don't want you having my data, then you'll have to know how to deal with that. So it's pretty real deal, and it's certainly coming, and we see it happening fast enough that we've we've already taken measures, but we're starting to talk about it a little bit more too with people who aren't necessarily our clients.
Well, I think it's interesting because a lot of people are, look at this in the beginning and say, well, it's not in my state, so I shouldn't have to worry. And my thought is, well, maybe now, but it's going to be in your state at some point because there's so much talk about security around data and internet and what's going on. So I think it's just a matter of time. Like you said before, there's either laws in every single state or there becomes a collective federal law that takes over in there. So let's talk about what first party data is. So the easiest way that I think to define first party data is data that you collect yourself. In other words, whether it's through a newsletter sign up, maybe on your website, or the data that you collect just to go do business with somebody, that's collecting first party data. And I'm going to stop a minute and say thank you very much, Renee and Linda, for the likes and loves. We really appreciate that. And for the rest of you, if you want to follow and get on the like and love train, hey, let's you go ahead and do that. But the reality is, first party data is data that you collect and you alone
about other people.
Yes.
And specifically in the context of commerce. So it's a little bit different when it's not or your audience anyway.
Doesn't it have to be your audience or somebody that does business with you? Because I can go to a phone book and collect data.
Yes, that's public data, and that's not the data that we're talking about. So generally, it's about who your audience is, and it gets a little bit gray there in terms of like who your audience is. If somebody comes to your website and views information on your website, and even fills out the form on your website and provides you their information, but they're outside your service area, is that your audience? Is that your market? Is that someone you could even do business with? And what do you do if you have this information about this person now on your servers or in your email or on your computer? So it's a little tricky, but yes, for the majority of people aren't really collecting data about other people and don't have a responsibility for what to do with it unless they're collecting it in order to monetize that data, right? They're either collecting it to sell that data or they're collecting it because those people in that audience are customers, are people who will buy what I'm selling.
Yeah, that's the way that I understood it too. So let's contrast first party data, the data you collect yourself, to third party data. And I'll just say, as marketers, we have really relied on third party data for a long time. And third party data is the data that we get from the platforms. I mean, the one that to me has changed the most, and I'm not saying that it is the one that's changed the most, just to me it has, is Facebook. I talked to a gentleman just yesterday talking about how in Facebook, he made a great living in Facebook for several years. And then in January of this year, ran the same exact ad, same exact landing page, same exact everything. He just duplicated what he'd done before for his client, put it in the ad in January, and they said that he had violated their rules and totally shut him and his client down off of Facebook. Totally got rid of his business. Gone. He had to start over from scratch. And so much of it had to do with the fact that two things. They've changed so many of the things on their privacy, but if you try to use if you try to use an old audience that you got before all these changes happened, then guess what? You're gone. So it's really a hard thing to know what data that you can use. So the third party data that so many of these other platforms have gathered and used really it's questionable now. I mean, people are almost afraid sometimes to use some of these platforms in order to, to do business. It's kind of crazy.
Well, the this is where the law is mostly has a lot to say about it, and what we expect to see additional laws being passed really concerning themselves with is the use of third-party data. The ability for a company to gather data and sell it to other businesses in order for them to use that information to solicit the people in that data, the people that that data represents. So um, we, as I understand it, that's where the majority of legislation really is occurring. However, there's quite a bit that has to be said about first party data too. So, but that's what third party data is. Third party data is data that you didn't collect because you have a relationship with the person whose data you're using. You got it from a third party and they gave it to you, and then you're using that in order to see if you can't get more customers, leads, or use that information to match it up with the data that you have to see if you can supplement your data. Like maybe you have names and email addresses, but you'd like to have phone numbers and addresses, and how many kids they have and what their annual income is, and just a lot more information about them, level of education, etc. All that demographic data. Maybe you don't have that information, but you'd like to add it to your own data. Then you can run your data through these third-party data providers, and they'll look and see what other information they have to supplement your data, and then sell it to you.
Yeah.
And it's it's a tremendous amount of data that is available out there this way, and because of privacy, because that's becoming more and more of a concern, the laws are really concerning themselves with what you can do with third-party data, what people who have data and want to sell it to others can do and can't do,
Right.
and how that data has to be treated.
And what's interesting about it is you talk to people, a lot of people that are business owners are like, what? You mean we can't do that anymore? We can't do this and we can't do that and go find this. Well, how in the world are we going to market to new people and da 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 da? And then I say, well, do you want somebody marketing to you with all that data? No. I don't want to give up. I don't want to give up my. I don't want people to know where I live. And so it's a double-edged sword. So the same people that we're, as marketers, that we've had the privilege to be able to go get, that they're going to stop a lot of it. We just have to realize a lot of those people have the same have the same attitude about it that many of us do. That I don't want somebody just knocking on my door that doesn't know me. That kind of a deal.
Exactly. And I'm no fan of big government, but I am a I see this as one area where government could get it right and could establish legislation that does protect people. Um, it's a philosophical question about whether we actually have a real right to any kind of privacy. But the government, if the government passes laws that protect my privacy, I'm interested in seeing that happen. I should only have people who possess the data about me that I want to have in possession of that data. So, um, that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Well, I'm going to check some comments that we have. So, can I get a hard example of what data looks like? I think we gave you that. It's everybody's name, phone number, all that. And what kind of data would he have used on Facebook? So, on Facebook, they used to have these audiences, and they were just massive audiences that you could get data that was pretty much on anything and everything you wanted to get, Renee. It was pretty extensive, and I can't even think of anything that got blocked. But there's like you used to be able to get kids, now you can't. I mean, you can't get teenagers, you can't get any of those kind of things. Oh, about the guy that got shut down. Okay, so he worked in the medical field, and so it was working with a supplement. That's what it was. So he was just using the same audience and the same data that he had used before. So Facebook changed all the rules, and because they changed the rules and he didn't realize what he had was against their rules, they shut him down. Does that answer your question? Hopefully it does.
I'll just add to that, and it's hard to talk about this kind of data stuff without getting like uh, getting your video taken down or removed, because we're talking about, the platform that we're using to broadcast this live is the same platform that we're talking about, so got to be a little careful. But the gist of it is that this platform that you're watching this on collects all sorts of information about the things that you like when you read other posts and you click like. It collects information about the products that you tweet about, or
Look at
post about, or look at, or share with other people. So it's built a tremendous amount of information about the kind of person that you are demographically. So what your product interests are, what your income level might be, and all of that, just based on your activities on the platform that it tracks and gathers data on. And it doesn't necessarily make that information available to us, to a person. Like I couldn't identify you by name in the system. They've prevented that. It's anonymized a little bit, but I could still reach you with an offer based on the fact that you are in a group of people who I am interested in um, getting in front of with an offer. So I have the ability to choose, you know, females between 35 and 55, and I have the ability to specify other demographic factors that I'm interested in, until I get a list back that is a random list. I don't get to see it, but Facebook then allows me to advertise to the people in that list. So I'm using their data, but I'm not in possession of their data. And it gets a little bit tricky there too. So unless you respond to an offer that I have and signal, hey, I'm interested, then I'll never know who you are. The moment you tell me that you're interested, though, now I know you're one of those people in that group that I advertise to, and now I have a bit of your personal information too. And I got that information through third-party means, but at the moment that you claim an offer, it becomes first-party data, and that's this weird kind of world called zero-party data, and it's a little bit confusing. I'm not even sure I can explain it coherently myself, but it's another factor here as well.
So here's another one. So theoretically, I could send messages to everyone who ever searched the word chimney. Actually, no. That's not how it works. It's not based on search terms. Now in Google, and when you're doing Google search, those are based on actual searches and search terms. But when we're talking about data, data is really more about the person, not, some of their behaviors. Yes. If they like something, if they like chimneys, if they did something like that, if they had an actual act of something and people could identify that they like chimneys, that would be one thing. But it's not really based around search totally. It's really based on your behaviors. Hopefully that makes sense. So Chuck, do not do anything you wouldn't want your mom to see or know about. Then you're all good. That is everything, Chuck. I mean, that is just online, offline, just in life. I think that's a good way to think about that. Perfect. And I'll tell you guys, as much as this is about privacy, it really is more about who owns the customer relationship. So this is where I really like first party data, because if you're always relying on third party data, like Carter said, you don't have a one-to-one relationship with them. I remember when there were people that were starting to work with Amazon a little bit. And one of the problems they had with Amazon was the fact that you didn't own that relationship. that Amazon didn't want you to contact them, that they would do everything for you, and then they would send it to you. A lot of the lead gen companies do that, but when you collect your own first party data, you actually own that relationship, so you're able to communicate with them anytime you want. I wouldn't over communicate, but you're able to communicate with them. Is that a good way to put that, Carter?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, third party data can be used to define an audience that you want to advertise to, and then once people in that audience respond to an offer and enter into your particular funnel, into your particular business to talk about doing business with you, then they become an identifiable lead to you, and hopefully an actual customer. And then at that point, that is your first party data, and you then have it to be able to do with it what you need to do in conducting your business. And because you now have a relationship, you own a relationship with that consumer who's doing business with you in some way. So um, that that that's how I would define it.
All right, so this one's yours, Carter.
Well, the challenges of collecting first party data, that's the job of marketing, specifically around getting people to respond to what you're offering, right? Your call to action, whatever that may be, whether that's scheduling an appointment or getting more information about a new product, or even just requesting a coupon. There's a lot of different ways, but essentially getting a customer to say, I'm interested enough in what you are offering me that I'm willing to give you my information in order to complete that transaction. So the challenge of getting that data is coming up with an offer that people want. That's marketing, and that's the primary responsibility of any business, is to figure out how to find the customers that are interested in what they have to offer, and presenting it in a way that people find irresistible. So um, I mean, the challenges are many. We could probably spend a whole um, uh, podcast talking specifically about what the challenges are, or different challenges that exist. But um, it's a lot of work. It's a tremendous amount of work to get good at getting leads through your own activities to get first party data.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then we're going to talk about zero party data that really just mushes things up to me. But to me, zero party is not that much different than first party. The exception to that, it's not trickery, but it's kind of like, I don't know if any of you guys have ever been on Facebook and somebody does this. They put a list together and they say, of all these things on here, mark the top, if you've never done it, mark it. If you've never done this, and it'll tell you what your age is. So that's one of the kind of things. Or they'll do trivia or a personality quiz of, find out if you've done, I saw one today, the New York Times. If you've done the Myers Briggs, then click here and go over here and find out what animal you are, that lines up with your Myers Briggs deal. Those are all quizzes. They're just different ways to engage with consumers, to be able to say, yep, you like me, you've clicked on something, and then gives them an opportunity to collect that data on you. So that's really my understanding of zero party data.
Yeah, I don't feel like I can articulate it well yet, and so I'm not going to even try to offer too much more on that particular type of data, simply because um, I've not taught it yet. I've not wrestled with like how to explain it well, so I'm not going to go there. I don't, and I'll just say this here, and I'll say it again at the end. What we're talking about here is our best understanding.
Yeah.
But before you go out and commit to any marketing activities, make sure that you consult your own marketers, the people that you work with to help with your marketing, as well as in some cases, a legal person to help you understand whether what you're doing with other people's data is allowable in your particular jurisdiction. Okay, so um, don't just take our word for it. Seek out counsel in your area.
And that's really important because there are different statutes in a lot of different places in the states right now surrounding these kind of things. So you have to be diligent on the legal end. That's absolutely true. But that brings us to the second challenge, because after you have the data, what the heck are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it? Because there's rules and regulations around that too.
There are things that you can do. You have the right to be able to communicate with your customers who have done business with you within a certain time period. But if it's longer than that time period since the last time you did business with them, then the rules change a little bit in terms of your ability to communicate with them or what you can communicate with them about. So there's lots of laws around email already. The CAN-SPAM Act is one that is been around for a decade or longer, that governs what kinds of emails you can send. Marketing emails, trying to entice someone with an offer and they're not your customer. That kind of marketing sent unsolicited is called spam, and it's not only frowned upon, it's illegal and there are fines. So you're not supposed to be doing that. The However, if you have someone on your customer list and can show proof that you've done business with them in the past 18 months, then that is a consumer that you can reach with a special offer. You can also reach them about the transaction that you've already had with them. So you can send them things like appointment reminders and a text message about an email message about an invoice that's overdue. That's all transactional, and you have the right to be able to email your customers that way up to the 18-month period. And then if you haven't done business with them in the past 18 months, then you really shouldn't be sending them any more special offers. So it's really important to continue emailing people on a consistent basis, because when they respond to your emails, when they stay engaged with you, that keeps that list alive and keeps your ability to continue emailing them alive. And it keeps people from falling off your list, in other words, just simply because they haven't done business with you in a long time. So that's part of the reason that we encourage people. The average home service business probably doesn't reach their customer more than once or twice a year, if even that, using email. And it's a real missed opportunity. It's a real way of getting phones to ring and keeping trucks rolling and keeping people busy, just by emailing on a consistent basis. But if you wait and wait and wait and 3 years go by and then you pull your list that goes back 15 years and you stick all of that into MailChimp or whatever, and you blast out this big email, you're going to have spam complaints. You're going to have it's going to damage your email reputation, your sending score, which is an important thing that determines whether or not the big email service providers like Gmail or Yahoo or the different ones will even let your emails through their servers to reach people who are using their services for their email address.
Okay, I'm gonna pause here for a minute, because a lot of these people don't realize that the providers themselves are actually monitoring a lot of the things that go on, so that you don't get in trouble and that they don't get in trouble. So that's one of the things, because one of the questions I got asked recently is, show me the law that says I can't do this. It's like, well, it's not it doesn't have to be a law. It's a rule and regulation from the providers that you use. And I don't know of an email client that doesn't have those things in place, or an email system. It's the sending system, but it's also the receiving if your spam score is so high, the receiving is not going to let it through. So, and then if you get blackballed or blacklisted, I guess is what it's called. If your email client gets blacklisted, then that means you don't receive any emails to your email. And so now somebody's got to go in and prove to the email clients that you're actually a good actor. So this is a bigger deal than what people want it. They just don't want to believe it, but it is a pretty big deal, and you can get some things shut down really easily.
Yeah, just because you didn't understand, how you were allowed to use the data in your own list.
Right.
The fact that data ages, and at some point you got to clean the fridge out, right? Like,
Exactly.
I mean, the lettuce doesn't always last, in the back shelf pushed to the back. So sometimes you just got to pull it out, throw it away. So your list has got to stay maintained, and it's, got to stay fresh. People who are receiving emails from you on a regular basis, and it doesn't have to be weekly or anything crazy. It just has to be, at least once a year, but preferably, once a quarter. That's enough to just keep people engaged. And if they'll read your email and open it up, then that's enough to be able to say they're active on my list. Even if I haven't done business with them before, they're interested in receiving the emails that I send with the special offers that might be attached. So that's important.
And the other thing, the text providers are starting to do the same thing when it comes to texting. So I just want to throw that out. They're starting to, and it's really not police them, but they're starting to have some rules around what is good and what isn't. And I think that's important to mention.
And I know we're going to go over time, but I want to say any kind of communication that you do around your business that isn't transactional, that is about marketing, like giving people an opportunity to spend money with you through a special offer, and you're sending that to them, regardless of whether they're active on your list or not, you should always have a way for them to say, I don't want to receive these anymore, right? Whether if it's a text message, then type stop to opt out, or if it's an email, then have a clear unsubscribe button at the bottom that allows them to say, I no longer want to get these emails from you. As long as you're putting your consumer in the driver's seat to specify whether or not they want to hear from you, then you've already done 50% of the work. And the remaining 50% is the gray area around whether or not you're even allowed to be in possession of that data that could allow you to email them. So like an email address or a phone number or a name and personal information about somebody that's done with business with you in the past. And that's where we're seeing laws changing, where states are saying, if a consumer contacts you and says, I want to know what information you have about me, then that business who operates in that state has to show them, here's the data that we have, and this is what we know about you. And if that consumer says, I don't want you to have any more of my data, please delete it all from your system, then you have to have a certifiable way to say that has been done and that your data no longer resides as part of your data set. So that's where the law is coming to. That's what things are starting to move toward. So that's why we're talking about these things now, because depending on what you're doing with your data, it may not be that way for much longer, or you may need to put certain systems and processes in place to safeguard the data and to comply with local regulations.
So at that point, I want to thank Chuck and Terry as well for giving us a little bit of love and like, and let you guys know that Spark Live can now be found as a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or your favorite player. And then next week, we're going to have some fun next week. We're bringing back the reviews, but we're going to talk about 3 ways to take advantage of a bad review. We have so many people that just absolutely freak over bad reviews. So we're going to talk about it. So this is interesting. So Terry says, thank you for explaining this issue. Had no idea. So here's Renee. What the heck is a certifiable notification?
I think what she means is how do you certify that you have the ability to send communications to somebody? And that is definitely a conversation for another day because a lot of those systems don't even exist yet. And a lot of companies are starting to explore the way of certifying the chain of ownership of first party data and third party data and keeping some things separate so that they're trackable and all of that. It really is a more in depth conversation about it. But in most markets in most states, that's not a requirement yet. So that's the reason that we're not really talking much about that just yet.
So, Terry, I agree. I can't wait for next week either. We'll have a good time. So, guys, thanks so much. We really do enjoy coming here every week. Thank you guys for participating. We'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Talk to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.